On nights when Hogwarts feels especially quiet, when the moon hangs low over the black lake and the castle windows glow like friendly lanterns in the dark, a certain kind of magic begins to stir, one that doesn't rush or sparkle loudly or ask for anyone's attention. It simply settles into the corridors and breaths between the walls, waiting for someone gentle enough, curious enough, or patient enough to notice it. Tonight, dear listener, is one of those nights. And the tale you are about to hear is one that rests softly within the folds of Hogwarts' memory, half forgotten by the students who lived it, yet never truly gone. It begins with a small, quiet mystery. An owl who refused to fly, not an injured owl, not a frightened owl, but something far stranger, something softly magical. And like many unusual things at Hogwarts, it started on a calm evening, the sort where the castle feels like a living lullaby, humming with ancient warmth. Imagine the castle now, settling into night. The sky above is painted in deep shades of violet and blue, the stars twinkling like tiny spells held in suspension. Lanterns flicker along the stone hallways, bathing everything in a warm golden glow. The portraits gossip lazily as they prepare to doze off, their painted eyelids drooping. The staircases shift at a leisurely pace, almost too sleepy to creak. And somewhere far below, the distant rumble of Peeves' laughter fades into silence as even chaos itself grows tired. Outside, the soft hooting of owls drifts through the crisp air. Feathers brush against moonlight as they glide toward the Owlery, carrying letters, secrets, hopes, and laughter to every corner of the wizarding world. Their wings stir the cool breeze, blending with the gentle hum of nighttime magic that wraps around the castle like a comforting blanket. As the listener settles in, breathing slowly, the castle seems to invite you closer, not with urgency, but with quiet companionship. You are welcome here, it whispers. You are safe here. And if you enjoy wandering through these sleepy corridors and discovering gentle mysteries, perhaps you might like, subscribe, or return again another night for as another dreamlike tale. But for now, you need not move or think too hard. Simply float along with the story. For tonight, Hogwarts has chosen to share a memory, calm, mysterious, and touched with the soft glow of wonder. A story beginning near the Owlery, where the feathered messengers of the castle roost, rest, and prepare for their nightly flights. But among them, perched quietly and stubbornly on a high wooden beam, was one owl whose wings remained folded, whose round amber eyes watched everything with unusual stillness. An owl who carried a message that could not be delivered because something in the heart of the night had changed. And so, with candlelight trembling gently along the castle walls and the moon watching peacefully from above, our tale begins. The story of the owl that refused to fly. At the heart of this quiet mystery were three familiar faces, students who had seen their fair share of wonder at Hogwarts, yet still found themselves surprised by the castle's gentler, more secret forms of magic. And on this sleepy evening, as the warm hush of night settled over the great hall and the last crumbs of dinner disappeared from golden plates, Harry, Hermione, and Ron were among the last lingering at the Gryffindor table. Harry, with his messy dark hair and gentle curiosity, sat leaning slightly forward, watching the candles float overhead. His green eyes reflected their soft glow, thoughtful and calm. The day had been long, filled with lessons, a bit of Quidditch practice, and a rather confusing discussion in defense against the dark arts. But the evening wrapped around him like a comforting cloud. Tonight, he wasn't the boy who lived, or the seeker, or the hero of anyone's expectations. He was simply Harry, a 16-year-old boy savoring the warmth of the castle he called home. Across from him, Hermione Granger flipped through a book that looked far too old to be handled with anything less than reverence. And yet, she held it with that familiar mix of care and enthusiasm, her fingers tracing the faded runes along the margin. Her bushy brown hair framed her face like a soft halo, and the faintest smile tugged at her lips whenever she discovered a sentence particularly worth remembering. But even she read slower tonight, almost lazily, enjoying the peaceful quiet rather than racing through pages for new information. And then, of course, there was Ron Weasley. Tall, lanky, and comfortably slouched in his seat, Ron wore the expression of someone who had eaten just a bit too much treacle tart, but was far too content to regret it. His freckles glowed warmly under the candlelight, and his blue eyes drifted between Harry and Hermione with the easy fondness of someone who couldn't imagine being anywhere else. His laugh had softened into occasional sleepy grins, and even his restless foot tapped more slowly than usual. They sat together not because anything particular demanded their attention, but because Hogwarts evenings had a way of drawing them close, especially during moments when nothing seemed urgent. Their friendship felt especially gentle tonight, the kind that didn't require words or excitement to feel full. Nearby, a few younger students whispered about homework. A pair of house elves quietly cleared the tables. From the open doors of the great hall, a cool breeze drifted in, carrying the distant hooting of owls and the sweet smell of autumn leaves. When the final candles dimmed themselves, Hermione closed her book with a soft thump. "I'd like to stop by the Owlery before bed," she murmured, stretching her arms lazily. "I promised to send Mum a letter tonight." Ron sighed in that familiar, half-dramatic, half-sweet way. "It's freezing up there," but Harry smiled. "A walk might be nice." And so, in that quiet, deeply peaceful moment, the trio stood, unaware that the Owlery held its own sleepy secret, a secret perched quietly in the rafters, waiting for them to notice. The night was cool, draped in a gentle hush that only Hogwarts could create, an embrace of soft shadows and distant sounds that seemed to move with a rhythm of their own. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione stepped out of the great hall, the marble floors gleamed beneath their feet, reflecting a faint golden glow from torches that flickered as though nodding to them in greeting. Every corridor felt calmer than usual, almost sleepy, as if the castle itself were resting after a long day. They walked slowly, taking their time. Harry kept his hands tucked in his pockets, savoring the quiet. Hermione held her book close to her chest, even though she'd finished reading it, and Ron dragged his fingers lazily across the cool stone wall as they moved, tracing its ancient grooves. Up ahead, long arched windows overlooked the moonlit grounds. The grass swayed gently outside, dotted with silver light, and the forbidden forest stood like a soft, dark blanket in the distance. From somewhere far off, Harry thought he heard the faint call of a night creature, something small and harmless, its sound like a lullaby drifting on the wind. The journey to the Owlery took them along the west side of the castle, where the air always smelled faintly of old parchment and morning dew, regardless of the hour. It was a comforting scent, one that wrapped around them like a familiar shawl. Ron yawned as they climbed the tower steps. Blimey, why does this staircase feel twice as long at night? Hermione gave him a sleepy smile. Maybe because your dinner plate was twice as full. Ron didn't bother arguing. He only grinned. The higher they climbed, the quieter everything became. The air grew colder, crisp enough to flush their cheeks pink, and the faint flutter of distant wings echoed softly from above. By the time they reached the top, the moon hung directly overhead, round and serene, casting gentle silver beams through the Owlery's open arches. The Owlery had always been a magical place, even without spells. Hundreds of perches lined the circular room, stretching up into the shadows. Small feathers floated lazily in the air, drifting like tiny soft snowflakes. The warm, earthy scent of straw and feathers mingled with the sharp chill of the open night, creating a strangely soothing blend. The owls themselves, dozens of them, watched silently, their glassy eyes glimmering with sleepy interest. Some blinked slowly, others tucked their heads beneath their wings. A few shuffled to adjust their perches, sending a faint rustle through the air that sounded like whispering wind. Harry scanned the room out of habit, half expecting Hedwig to swoop down from her favorite high arch, though he knew she wasn't here tonight. A soft ache tugged at his chest, but only gently, like a memory instead of a wound. Hermione stepped forward, parchment in hand. "I'll only take a minute," she whispered, as though afraid to disturb the resting birds. Ron nodded and leaned against the railing, letting the cool night breeze brush across his face. Harry moved beside him, listening to the slow breathing of sleeping owls, a strangely calming sound. Then, softly, almost too softly to notice, there was a tiny movement. A flutter, but not quite a flutter. A rustle, but not quite that either. It was more like hesitation, a hesitant shift of feathers. Hermione paused, quill half raised, her ears catching the gentle disturbance. "Did you hear that?" Ron blinked. Probably just one of them dreaming. Owls dream, right? Harry wasn't so sure. He turned his head slowly, letting his eyes adjust to the moonlit shadows. The movement had come from the far left corner of the Owlery, one of the oldest, most forgotten corners. No one ever used that perch anymore. It was tucked so deeply into shadow that students rarely even noticed it. But tonight, something was different. Harry took a small step forward, then another. The floorboards creaked gently under his weight, but the owls didn't react. They remained still, tucked and peaceful. When he reached the corner, he saw it. A single owl, small, soft, snowy white, with delicate feathers that shimmered faintly, In the moonlight, not as large or grand as Hedwig, more delicate, like a younger cousin. Its feathers were fluffed, as though it were trying to gather warmth that the night wouldn't give. Its golden eyes sparkled with a gentle intelligence, but something about them seemed troubled, quietly troubled. Harry crouched down slowly, careful not to startle it. "Hello there," he whispered, his voice warm. The owl didn't flinch. It only blinked at him, long and slow, like someone waking from a dream they weren't quite ready to leave. Ron joined him, curious. "Looks a bit lonely, doesn't it?" Hermione stepped closer. "Or frightened," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly with worry. "Poor thing. Are you hurt?" She reached out a hand, but paused just short of touching. The owl didn't pull away, but something about its stillness made her stop. Owls were creatures of grace and alertness. They always shifted, cleaned their feathers, tilted their heads. They were never this still. Harry leaned a little closer. "Are you lost?" he whispered. The owl blinked once, and then, softly, it opened its beak, but no sound came out. Instead, a faint shimmer seeped from its feathers, silver, soft, like moonlit dust. The shimmer rose slowly, curling upward in tiny glowing strands before dissolving into the air. Hermione gasped. That's not normal. That's magic." Ron leaned back slightly. "Well, at least it's pretty magic and not dangerous magic." But Hermione didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the owl, full of understanding and concern. The owl lifted its wings, just an inch, just enough to show the feathers trembling. Then it lowered them again, unable or unwilling to rise. Harry's heart squeezed. "You can't fly, can you?" he whispered gently. The owl blinked again, and this time something soft and shimmering drifted from its wings like a sigh, a whisper of magic, a whisper of something hidden, quiet, but deeply sad. Hermione placed a hand gently on Harry's shoulder. "It's not refusing to fly," she said softly. "It's trying." Ron swallowed, his voice quiet. "But something's stopping it." The wind blew through the owlery then, a soft, cool breeze that stirred the feathers on the floor, but didn't touch the little owl at all. It sat untouched, unmoved, as though the wind couldn't reach it, as though it existed slightly out of place, slightly out of sync. Harry felt a slow chilomel trace the back of his neck, not frightening, just deeply curious. "What if," he murmured, "it's not just an owl?" Hermione nodded slowly. "I think this owl is carrying something, a message, a spell, or maybe a secret." Ron exhaled softly, eyes wide. "And it picked us?" The owl looked up at them once more, and for the briefest moment, just a heartbeat, it shimmered again, its feathers glowing faintly, like silver parchment catching candlelight. Not enough to alarm, just enough to beckon. And in that peaceful, moonlit owlery, the first magical twist of their sleepy adventure settled into place, quiet and gentle, like the beginning of a lullaby whispered by something ancient and unseen. The owlery, usually a place of simple rhythms and quiet wing beats, seemed to settle into an even deeper stillness after Harry, Hermione, and Ron gathered around the mysterious little owl. It perched motionless, shimmering faintly beneath the moonlight, as its soft feathers rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. Somewhere far above them, an older barn owl fluffed its wings in its sleep, the faint rustling echoing softly through the tower like a drifting whisper. The night breeze came and went in sighs, the kind of gentle wind that wrapped the world in calmness instead of cold. Harry felt it brush his cheek, cool and delicate. Yet when he looked down at the little owl again, the breeze didn't touch it at all. Its feathers didn't stir, even slightly, as if the air had simply chosen not to reach it. Ron glanced over his shoulder nervously. It's strange, isn't it? Like it's living inside a bubble or something. Hermione nodded slowly. A magical displacement, very rare, very unusual, almost like the owl is here, but also... She hesitated, searching for the right word. Also somewhere else. Harry crouched again, his voice soft and warm. "We're not going to hurt you. We just want to help." The owl blinked once, twice, and then, ever so gently, it tilted its head to the side. That small movement felt deliberate, almost meaningful, like an invitation. "Look," Hermione whispered. "It's responding." Ron took a careful step forward, leaning in. Maybe it wants us to follow it or something. But the owl didn't move. It only blinked again and released another faint shimmer, silver dust rising like smoke, but dissolving into tiny sparks of light. Harry watched the glow fade in the air with growing curiosity. Each sparkle seemed to hum softly, a sound too gentle to truly hear, but somehow felt inside the chest. Hermione recognized the phenomenon immediately. "Residual magic," she murmured, "but not cast magic. It's natural magic, magic that's part of the creature itself." Harry's heart tightened softly with wonder, kind of like how phoenixes have magic in their feathers. "Maybe," Hermione whispered, "but this is much gentler, almost fragile." Ron swallowed. Well, fragile magic is still magic, and magic usually means problems. "Or answers," Hermione corrected softly. Before Ron could reply, a soft tremor ran through the Owlery floor, so subtle Harry wondered whether he imagined it. The wooden boards beneath them creaked in a long, slow sigh. The owls lining the walls did not react. They stayed nestled in their feathers, breathing deeply, as if deep in enchanted slumber. Then, from high above in the shadows, a sound began. Not loud, not sharp, a low hum, a steady, soft vibration, like the gentle ringing of a faraway bell. Harry felt it first, a tingling sensation across his fingertips, traveling up his arms in a ripple of warmth. It wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt like standing near a warm fireplace after a cold walk, comforting and soothing. Hermione straightened immediately. "Do you feel that?" Ron pressed a hand to his chest. "It's like the room is humming." The humming deepened, still soft but more present, like a melody awakening. Feathers resting on the floor began to tremble faintly, bouncing ever so slightly, shivering like small white petals touched by invisible raindrops. The little owl, however, remained perfectly still, unmoved, unaffected. Harry felt his breath deepen as the hum grew warmer. The sound didn't come from the owl. It came from somewhere else entirely. Something older, something hidden, something waking. The hum shifted in tone, rising to a soft vibration that made the torches flicker along the walls even though there was no wind. Harry turned slowly to the high arches of the Owlery. Moonlight poured in through the tall stone windows, but something was wrong with the light. It shimmered, not brightly, not sharply, but like a reflection seen through gently moving water. The moonlight rippled. "Do you see that?" Hermione whispered, amazement melting into her voice. "It's bending." Ron squinted. "Moonlight doesn't bend, does it?" Hermione shook her head softly. "No, not unless something magical is interfering with it." Harry took a quiet step toward the window, drawn by the slow ripple of silver light. As he approached, the humming grew warmer, the soft vibrations brushing against his skin like whispers. The moon outside looked exactly the same, but the light entering the window seemed different, almost alive, like it was responding to something inside the tower. Behind him, the little owl finally moved, a small, gentle flutter of its wings, not enough to lift off, not enough to fly, but enough to release a stronger shimmer of silver dust. The dust rose higher this time, swirling slowly, forming a soft spiral. The spiral drifted toward the moonlight, and when it touched the rippling silver glow, everything shifted. The hum stopped, the shimmering stopped, the moonlight froze, still and solid as glass, and then the moonlight cracked. A single, delicate fracture ran across the beam, spilling into the tower, splitting the silvery glow into two. It didn't make a sound, but the crack was unmistakable, a thin, jagged line of shadow slicing through light. Hermione gasped softly, a hand pressed over her mouth. That's not possible," Ron whispered. "Harry, light isn't supposed to crack." Harry didn't move. He simply watched as the crack in the moonlight spread slightly, forming a thin, shimmering seam in the air, a seam like a door made of silver light. The crack pulsed gently, as though breathing. The owls in the tower remained deep in sleep, their chests rising and falling peacefully. The very air felt slow, softened, suspended in a kind of magical quiet. Hermione whispered, "It's a rift." Ron blinked slowly. "A what?" "A magical rift," she murmured, eyes wide, a tear between two layers of space. "But I've never seen one before, not in real life." Harry stepped closer. He could feel warmth radiating from the crack, a soothing warmth, not dangerous, like standing near a candle on a cold night. The crack widened just an inch, and inside it, Harry saw nothing. Not darkness, not light, just quiet emptiness, a calm void, like a blank page before it's written. The little owl fluttered its wings again. This time, a sigh, soft as snowfall, escaped from its beak. A shimmering wisp drifted upward from its feathers and floated toward the rift. When the silver dust touched the crack, the rift pulsed softly, becoming just a little wider. Ron whispered, "It's reacting to the owl." Hermione nodded, still breathless. The owl isn't just magical, it's connected to the rift somehow. It's like the two are resonating. Harry crouched beside the owl again. "Is this what you wanted to show us?" he whispered. "Is this why you couldn't fly?" The owl blinked once, slow, grateful, and then gently, It leaned forward and nudged something with its beak, a small object hidden beneath a loose board. Harry reached down and carefully lifted the plank. Beneath it rested a tiny wooden box, old and worn, engraved with curling runes so delicate they looked like they had been carved by moonlight instead of tools. A small, gentle flutter of its wings, not enough to lift off, not enough to fly, but enough to release a stronger shimmer of silver dust. The dust rose higher this time, swirling slowly, forming a soft spiral. The spiral drifted toward the moonlight, and when it touched the rippling silver glow, everything shifted. The hum stopped. The shimmering stopped. The moonlight froze, still and solid as glass. And then, the moonlight cracked. A single, delicate fracture ran across the beam, spilling into the tower, splitting the silvery glow into two. It didn't make a sound, but the crack was unmistakable, a thin, jagged line of shadow slicing through light. Hermione gasped softly, a hand pressed over her mouth. That's not possible," Ron whispered. "Harry, light isn't supposed to crack." Harry didn't move. He simply watched as the crack in the moonlight spread slightly, forming a thin, shimmering seam in the air. A seam like a door made of silver light. The crack pulsed gently, as though breathing. The owls in the tower remained deep in sleep, their chests rising and falling peacefully. The very air felt slow, softened, suspended in a kind of magical quiet. Hermione whispered, "It's a rift." Ron blinked slowly. "A what?" "A magical rift," she murmured, eyes wide, a tear between two layers of space. "But I've never seen one before, not in real life." Harry stepped closer. He could feel warmth radiating from the crack, a soothing warmth, not dangerous, like standing near a candle on a cold night. The crack widened just an inch, and inside it, Harry saw nothing. Not darkness, not light, just quiet emptiness, a calm void, like a blank page before it's written. The little owl fluttered its wings again. This time, a sigh, soft as snowfall, escaped from its beak. A shimmering wisp drifted upward from its feathers and floated toward the rift. When the silver dust touched the crack, the rift pulsed softly, becoming just a little wider. Ron whispered, "It's reacting to the owl." Hermione nodded, still breathless. The owl isn't just magical, it's connected to the rift somehow. It's like the two are resonating. Harry crouched beside the owl again. "Is this what you wanted to show us?" he whispered. "Is this why you couldn't fly?" The owl blinked once, slow, grateful, and then, gently, it leaned forward and nudged something with its beak, a small object hidden beneath a loose board. Harry reached down and carefully lifted the plank. Beneath it rested a tiny wooden box, old and worn, engraved with curling runes so delicate they looked like they had been carved by moonlight instead of tools. The Owlery felt different now, still the same stone tower, still the same circling beams of moonlight, still the same soft rustle of sleeping owls, but something within the space had shifted. It was subtle, like waking from a dream and feeling that the world is not quite where you left it. A deeper quiet had fallen over the room, the kind of quiet that makes every whisper feel important, every breath a moment of connection. Harry gently closed the tiny wooden box containing the memory-whispering quill. The soft click of the lid seemed to echo slightly, as if the room had grown more hollow, or perhaps more attentive. The little owl watched them closely, its shimmering feathers glowing faintly in the pale moonlight. It didn't move, didn't attempt to fly, but something in its gaze held trust, fragile yet present, like a candle flame protected from the wind. Hermione exhaled slowly. This quill, and the rift, and this owl, they're all tied together somehow. We just haven't figured out how. Ron rubbed the back of his neck. Well, if the rift is some kind of magical tear, shouldn't we, tell someone? Hermione gave him a patient smile. Tell them what, Ron? That moonlight cracked? She shook her head softly. We need more understanding before we go to any professor. Harry nodded quietly. The owl brought this to us for a reason. I think it wants us to help. The owl blinked slowly, as if agreeing. A soft shimmer drifted from its feathers and settled on the floor like falling snow. The dust spread gently, forming a faint trail, barely visible, but shimmering enough to catch the eye. Hermione was the first to whisper what they were all thinking. A path. Ron leaned in. But a path to where? The rift? Maybe, Hermione murmured, or maybe to whatever connects the rift to the owl. Harry's voice softened. Let's follow it, slowly, carefully. And so, with the calmness of dreamwalkers, drifting through a night that felt almost enchanted, the three friends stepped forward. The shimmering dust glowed faintly under their feet, like tiny constellations scattered across the stone floor. They moved slowly, each step mindful of the quietness around them. The Owlery's torches flickered gently, their flames bending slightly toward the trail as though drawn to its magic. The silver dust wound its way past the sleeping owls, spiraling toward a staircase they had rarely used. The narrow steps descended into a quieter part of the tower, a place where the air grew cooler and the moonlight filtered in only as thin silver ribbons through tiny slits in the stone. Strange, Hermione whispered, running her fingers lightly along the wall. This staircase, I don't remember it feeling so cold. Ron huffed a soft breath. Everything feels strange tonight. I feel like if I say the wrong word, something might, I don't know, float away. Harry gave him a small smile. It won't. We're in this together. That reassurance, warm and sincere, settled something inside Ron, and he nodded gratefully. As they descended, the soft hum from earlier returned, not loud, not alarming, but gentle, like a lullaby played on a distant instrument. It vibrated faintly in the walls, in the floor, even in the air they breathed. Hermione paused, eyes half closed. The hum is guiding us. It's connected to the rift. Or the quill, Harry added softly. Or both. Ron shivered, not from fear, but from the strangeness of the sensation. Feels like walking through someone's memory. Hermione opened her eyes, thoughtful. Maybe we are. The silver trail led them to a small wooden door tucked behind the final bend of the staircase. The door was old. Dust settled thick along its edges, as though no one had opened it in decades. but the silver trail pooled at its base, glowing softly like moonlight gathered in a bowl. Harry gently pushed the door open. A breath of warm air drifted out. Not hot, just warm enough to contrast with the cool tower, like stepping into a room that had been waiting with quiet patience. Inside lay a small chamber lined with shelves. Old scrolls, ancient feathers, and little bottles filled with dried ink sat neatly along the walls. Everything felt untouched, unused, yet perfectly preserved, like a room frozen in time, quietly waiting. Hermione's voice was soft with wonder. This must have been an old owl keeper's study, maybe even a Ravenclaw's personal workspace. Ron stepped inside, running a finger over the dusty table. Well, someone hasn't been here for ages. Harry walked slowly to the center of the room, still holding the tiny box with the quill. But something brought us here, and I think we're meant to find something. The little owl hopped gently down from Harry's shoulder, a small, hesitant movement, and glided to the middle of the room, landing beside a nearly invisible crack in the floor. Not a dangerous one, but a thin, delicate line that looked almost like a second seam of moonlight. The owl pecked at the crack lightly. A soft hum echoed through the room, and the crack opened, only a fraction, but enough to reveal a tiny, hollow space beneath. Inside lay a folded piece of parchment, its edges yellowed with age. Harry carefully retrieved it. Hermione leaned in, curiosity glowing softly in her eyes. What does it say? Harry unfolded it slowly, but the parchment was blank. Completely blank. Ron frowned. Well, that's helpful. Hermione shook her head, thoughtful. It's not blank, it's waiting. Waiting for what? Ron asked. Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. For the quill, Hermione whispered. Harry took out the memory-whispering quill and placed its tip gently against the blank parchment. The moment quill touched page, a soft glow spread across the paper, like moonlight pouring across still water. The glow didn't brighten or flash. It grew slowly, gently. A soft swirling of pale blue light spiraled across the parchment, forming symbols that seemed half written, half remembered. The quill moved on its own, gliding with the delicacy of a breath, sketching out shapes that shifted like reflections. Hermione whispered, "It's writing, but not ink. It's writing magic." Ron leaned closer, mesmerized. What's it saying? Harry watched as the swirling symbols settled into soft, curved letters. They didn't form normal words. They formed whispers. The parchment didn't speak aloud. It breathed. A soft rustle rose from the page, like the sound of turning leaves, and the whispers formed into meaning, not through sound, but through feeling, as if the parchment shared its knowledge directly into their minds. The message was calm, ancient, soothing in a way that felt like listening to rainfall. The meaning unfolded slowly. Magic lost its voice. Magic sought a carrier. Magic hid itself in soft wings. The humming deepened slightly, still gentle, but more present now, as though responding to the message itself. Hermione covered her mouth in awe. The spells didn't fail. Magic didn't disappear. It retreated. Retreated, Ron repeated. Harry nodded slowly, feeling the truth settle inside him like a warm weight. Something frightened it, or heard it, or he hesitated. Something drained it. Hermione placed a hand on Harry's arm. If magic withdrew from the world, even for a moment, it would have sought the safest place to hide. Ron glanced at the little owl. In that? Hermione nodded softly. In that. The little owl blinked again, slow and grateful. It wasn't that the owl refused to fly. It couldn't. Not while carrying the weight of magic itself. The parchment shimmered once more, revealing another whisper. Return what was taken. Heal what was broken. Follow the rift. Harry exhaled slowly. The rift isn't just a doorway. Hermione finished the thought. It's a wound. Ron looked between them, and the owl. Is the bandage? Not a bandage, Hermione murmured. A guardian. The chamber, the shimmer, the hum, the silence. It all felt connected now, not dangerous, just waiting for them to understand. Harry placed the parchment gently back into the hollow space. So we follow the rift, he whispered, not to close it immediately, but to understand it. Hermione nodded. Magic wants to be found, and it chose us because we were listening. Ron smiled softly. Guess we're not going back to sleep anytime soon. The little owl fluttered its wings once more, the tiniest movement, but this time a small spark of silver dust drifted upward, floating toward the ceiling. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made of stars. And somewhere above them, subtle but sure, the rift answered. The chamber beneath the Owlery felt warmer now, as though the parchment's whisper had awakened something gently slumbering in the air. Soft pulses of magic lingered like drifting lantern lights, and the faint hum threaded through the stone like a calming lullaby. Harry, Hermione, Ron, and the tiny owl stood together in the quiet glow, united by a secret that seemed to breathe softly around them. Harry held the wooden box with the memory-whispering quill close to his chest. It no longer felt like an object. It felt like a companion, guiding them gently through a fog of ancient magic. The owl hopped closer to Harry's foot, its silver-dusted feathers shimmering faintly with every tiny movement. Ron exhaled slowly, rubbing his palms on his robes. "All right," he murmured in a soft voice. "We know the rift isn't just a hole in the air. It's hurt magic, hiding magic, magic that wants help." Hermione nodded, and the owl has been carrying that magic, or protecting it. Harry looked toward the narrow staircase that led back into the quiet, moonlit corridors of Hogwarts. The rift is somewhere above. Maybe it's grown, or maybe it's waiting for us. Hermione stepped closer to him, her voice warm and steady. "Then let's explore, but slowly, gently. Whatever magic is at play tonight, it feels fragile." Ron gave a tiny nod. Fragile and whispery, and slightly terrifying, but in that soft, bedtime story way. Hermione giggled quietly, and the warmth of that small laugh filled the room like sunlight passing through stained glass. Even the owl tilted its head, as if pleased by the sound. Harry opened the chamber door, and together they stepped back into the winding stairway. The chamber beneath the Owlery felt warmer now, as though the parchment's whisper had awakened something gently slumbering in the air. Soft pulses of magic lingered like drifting lantern lights, and the faint hum threaded through the stone like a calming lullaby. Harry, Hermione, Ron, and the tiny owl stood together in the quiet glow, united by a secret that seemed to breathe softly around them. Harry held the wooden box with the memory-whispering quill close to his chest. It no longer felt like an object. It felt like a companion, guiding them gently through a fog of ancient magic. The owl hopped closer to Harry's foot, its silver-dusted feathers shimmering faintly with every tiny movement. Ron exhaled slowly, rubbing his palms on his robes. "All right," he murmured in a soft voice. "We know the rift isn't just a hole in the air. It's hurt magic, hiding magic, magic that wants help." Hermione nodded, and the owl has been carrying that magic, or protecting it. Harry looked toward the narrow staircase that led back into the quiet, moonlit corridors of Hogwarts. "The rift is somewhere above. Maybe it's grown, or maybe it's waiting for us." Hermione stepped closer to him, her voice warm and steady. "Then let's explore, but slowly, gently, whatever magic is at play tonight. It feels fragile." Ron gave a tiny nod. Fragile and whispery, and slightly terrifying, but in that soft, bedtime story way. Hermione giggled quietly, and the warmth of that small laugh filled the room like sunlight passing through stained glass. Even the owl tilted its head, as if pleased by the sound. Harry opened the chamber door, and together they stepped back into the winding stairway. Hogwarts had never felt so still. As they climbed, the soft silver trail shimmered ahead of them, as though the owl had left lace-thin traces of magic earlier, marking the path they would someday need. The dust danced in the air, lifting and swirling lazily like illuminated snowflakes. When they reached the landing, the corridor was bathed in soft blue moonlight. Tapestries fluttered gently without wind. Stone walls seemed slightly illuminated from within, as though holding layers of old magic that had awakened for just this night. Ron whispered, "Feels like the castle knows." Hermione rested her hand on the wall. "It does. Hogwarts always knows." Harry let his fingertips brush the air near the shimmering path. It pulsed faintly beneath his hand, warm and inviting. "We'll follow it," he said softly, "but we decide how." The silver trail branched into two directions, one leading deeper into the castle's heart, toward the grand staircase, the other curling back toward the upper towers, winding in gentle spirals like a ribbon caught in slow motion. Ron frowned lightly. "Two paths. Brilliant. Love when old magic gives us options." Harry smiled. "It wants us to choose." Hermione looked carefully at each path. "The trail toward the grand staircase carries more magic. It feels heavier, like deeper memories or older spells might be waiting." Ron nodded. "What about the other path?" Hermione tilted her head, eyes half closed. "The tower path feels lighter, softer, almost like the magic there remembers laughter and calm lessons." Harry thought about it quietly. Both paths felt right. Both felt gentle. Neither carried fear. This was a moment of intention. "Let's choose the path that feels most connected to the owl," Harry murmured. The little owl fluttered its wings softly. A faint sparkle drifted toward the spiral leading up the tower. Hermione smiled. "That settles it." The upward path led them through narrow stone corridors rarely used after nightfall. The castle's silence deepened the higher they climbed. Every step felt cushioned by centuries of memories, held safely in the walls like old lullabies. Small moments appeared along the way, a portrait asleep in its frame, the painted figure curled beneath a quilt of moonlit brushstrokes, a vase of enchanted flowers that glowed faintly, their petals rising and falling as if breathing, a staircase that turned gently of its own accord, not to startle them, but to guide them softly toward the next hallway. Hermione whispered, "Everything feels alive tonight." Ron added, "But in a nice way, like when Mom tucks a blanket around you without waking you." Harry chuckled quietly. "Exactly like that." The silver trail grew more delicate the higher they climbed. Eventually, it faded entirely, leaving them in a long, round room they had never seen before, though it felt familiar in a distant, comforting way. The room was circular, with high arching windows revealing moonlit clouds drifting across the night sky. Bookshelves lined the walls, but these books were untouched, ancient, wrapped in soft cloth ribbons. Crystal lanterns hung from the ceiling, glowing with steady, gentle blue light. Hermione's eyes widened. "Harry, Ron, this is the quiet study." Ron blinked. "The what?" "It's a room only Ravenclaws talk about. A place where magic rests, where spells regenerate, where silence mends everything." Harry ran his hand along a polished oak table. "Magic is healing here." Hermione nodded. "And maybe the owl brought us because this room can help." The little owl hopped toward the center of the room, its silver feathers brightening slightly. It looked up at Harry, Hermione, and Ron as if trying to say, "Here. This is where the healing continues." Hermione knelt gently. "This room, it strengthens magic. The rift must be connected to it, or maybe it opened because the room's energy was disturbed." Harry nodded. "If magic is wounded, this is where it comes to breathe." Ron looked around, slowly taking in the gentle glow. "Feels like a place that remembers every spell cast in Hogwarts, like it keeps the memories safe." Harry's voice was soft. "A sanctuary." The owl fluttered once more. A gentle wave of silver dust drifted over the room, settling like morning frost. Hermione inhaled deeply. "I think it's showing us what comes next." Harry stepped beside the owl. "The rift must be near, but maybe we're not supposed to close it. Not yet." Hermione nodded. "Not until we understand what caused it. Not until we know why magic hid." Ron rubbed his chin. "So what do we do now? Just sit here?" Hermione smiled warmly. "Sometimes, Ron, exploring is resting, listening, letting magic speak." Harry felt the truth of those words settle inside him. We stay. We absorb the room's quiet. We let it guide us. The owl nestled into the center of the room, its wings folding gently around itself. The warm glow around it grew steadier, more peaceful. A soft hum filled the chamber, a soothing vibration that felt like floating between dreams. Harry sat beside the owl. Hermione sat on his left. Ron sat on his right. The three friends breathed in the same calm, moonlit air, and the castle held them, protected them, guided them, not with force, with quiet, with stillness, with choice. And somewhere beyond the round room, beyond the quiet study, somewhere in the castle's upper chambers, the rift pulsed softly, waiting, not threatening, not dangerous, just calling, not for action, but for understanding. The little owl hopped toward the center of the room, its silver feathers brightening slightly. It looked up at Harry, Hermione, and Ron as if trying to say, "Here. This is where the healing continues." Hermione knelt gently. "This room, it strengthens magic. The rift must be connected to it, or maybe it opened because the room's energy was disturbed." Harry nodded. "If magic is wounded, this is where it comes to breathe." Ron looked around, slowly taking in the gentle glow. "Feels like a place that remembers every spell cast in Hogwarts, like it keeps the memories safe." Harry's voice was soft. "A sanctuary." The owl fluttered once more. A gentle wave of silver dust drifted over the room, settling like morning frost. Hermione inhaled deeply. "I think it's showing us what comes next." Harry stepped beside the owl. The rift must be near, but maybe we're not supposed to close it. Not yet. Hermione nodded. "Not until we understand what caused it. Not until we know why magic hid." Ron rubbed his chin. "So what do we do now? Just sit here?" Hermione smiled warmly. "Sometimes, Ron, exploring is resting, listening, letting magic speak." Harry felt the truth of those words settle inside him. We stay. We absorb the room's quiet. We let it guide us. The owl nestled into the center of the room, its wings folding gently around itself. The warm glow around it grew steadier, more peaceful. A soft hum filled the chamber, a soothing vibration that felt like floating between dreams. Harry sat beside the owl. Hermione sat on his left. Ron sat on his right. The three friends breathed in the same calm, moonlit air, and the castle held them, protected them, guided them, not with force, with quiet, with stillness, with choice. And somewhere beyond the round room, beyond the quiet study, somewhere in the castle's upper chambers, the rift pulsed softly, waiting, not threatening, not dangerous, just calling, not for action, but for understanding. The quiet study wrapped the three friends in a cocoon of blue and silver light. Ron leaned back against one of the round cushions, soft and cloud-like, blinking dreamily. Hermione sat with her legs folded neatly beneath her, her hands resting on the warm wooden floor that seemed to hum softly under her palms. Harry sat closest to the little owl, who had tucked its head under its wing only to peek up now and again, as if gathering courage for something important. For a long moment, the room simply breathed around them, gentle light, faint warmth, and the deep whisper of ancient magic. Hogwarts felt alive, but in a sleepy way, as though the castle was thinking slowly, peacefully. Harry let the silence settle over him like a soft blanket. "Do you feel that?" he murmured. Hermione nodded. "Yes, something shifting, not frightening, more like..." She searched for the right word, like a memory deciding to reveal itself. Ron blinked himself awake a little, like when you remember where you put your socks after 3 days. Hermione giggled softly. and the owl fluttered its wings at the warm sound. But then something gentle and glowing began happening in the center of the room. The silver dust that had settled earlier now rose again, floating upward as if stirred by invisible currents. It gathered over the owl, swirling in soft spirals that shimmered like fog kissed by starlight. From that glowing mist, something began to form. Not a creature, not quite a spell, not a person either. A shape as delicate as a reflection on still water. Harry leaned forward, but carefully, not wanting to disrupt the fragile formation. Hermione's eyes widened, her voice barely a breath. "It's a memory. A spell memory," Ron whispered. "A what now?" Hermione's gaze softened. Some spells leave echoes when they're cast with strong emotion, deep emotion. Those echoes sometimes drift, and sometimes they hide. The shape continued to build itself, gathering detail. A faint silhouette appeared. A person, small, slender, wearing old-fashioned Hogwarts robes. The figure looked young, no older than a third year. The room held its breath. Then the memory silhouette looked directly at Harry. Harry swallowed softly. "Hermione, can spell memories see us?" "Only when they were created with intent," she whispered back. "Someone made this on purpose." The memory figure raised its hand, and a soft pulse rippled through the room. From that pulse came a voice, gentle, trembling, and not quite whole, like a whispered lullaby drifting through half-remembered dreams. The three friends remained still as the glow in the room mellowed into a soft blue hush. Ron whispered, "Harry, Hermione, we're fixing a spell from someone who lived here ages ago." Harry nodded. "We're finishing a promise." Hermione wiped a gentle tear from her cheek. "And helping a bond between a student and their owl finally rest." The owl hopped onto Harry's knee, its feathers warm and steady now. It no longer trembled, no longer shivered. It felt ready. Harry looked to his friends. "Tomorrow night," he said gently, "we go to the attic." Hermione smiled softly. "To remind magic that love doesn't get forgotten." Ron took a slow, deep breath, and hopefully get some sleep after. They chuckled quietly, their laughter blending with the gentle humming of the room. The insight was clear, calm, beautiful. The owl wasn't broken, the magic wasn't lost, the rift wasn't dangerous. It was simply a forgotten spell waiting to be seen again, waiting for closure, waiting to breathe and rest, and finally, after all these years, let go. And the three friends, wrapped in the quiet glow of the round room, knew they were exactly where they needed to be. The next evening at Hogwarts arrived like the slow turning of a page, quiet, gentle, and wrapped in a twilight hush. A pale blue glow drifted across the castle grounds, touching the stones with softness. The sky stretched above in velvet colors, fading from lavender to deep indigo, and the moon shimmered like a silver coin resting in a pocket of clouds. Inside Gryffindor Tower, Harry slipped on his cloak while checking on the little owl perched comfortably on his shoulder. The tiny creature no longer trembled. Instead, it nestled against him with a soft confidence, as if sensing that its long wait was nearing its end. Hermione met them at the bottom of the staircase, with her own cloak bundled tightly around her, and Ron followed behind, rubbing his eyes as though he had just woken from a nap he hadn't meant to take. "All right," Ron murmured, stretching his arms. "Let's send this magic to bed so we can all finally sleep properly." Hermione smiled gently. "It won't be hard. The spell isn't fighting us. It just needs guiding home." And so, the three friends quietly slipped out of their common room, padding through the dim corridors of Hogwarts. The castle seemed unusually peaceful tonight. Torches flickered softly, portraits whispered warm nighttime greetings. Even the distant staircases shifted with sleepy slowness, letting the castle settle into its nightly rhythm. Harry led the way, the owl resting comfortably. Its feathers caught the moonlight that spilled through the high windows, making it glow faintly, like a creature woven from moonbeams rather than feathers. As they reached the upper levels of the Ravenclaw Tower, the halls grew narrower, quieter, and older. Here, dust lay gently across forgotten portraits. Old stone arches curved delicately overhead. A faint smell of parchment lingered in the air, touched by something sweet, as though memory itself carried a scent. Hermione traced her fingers lightly along the wall. "This part of the tower hasn't been used in a long time," she whispered. "Magic sleeps more deeply here." Ron nodded. "Feels cozy, actually." Finally, they reached a small wooden door, plain, cracked, and softened by years of quiet existence. Harry pushed it open gently. A small attic room greeted them, round and warm, lit by moonlight pouring through a single circular window. The floor was wooden, slightly uneven. A dusty rug lay at the center. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old quills, parchment rolls, and tiny vials that shimmered faintly in the light. At the far end was a little perch, a simple wooden stand, worn smooth in the center as though a small owl had once rested there every night. Hermione breathed softly. "This is the place from the memory." Harry approached the perch slowly, the owl shifting with quiet anticipation. Its tiny talons pressed gently into Harry's sleeve. When they reached the stand, the owl lifted its head, gazing at it with a soft recognition that needed no words. Harry whispered, "Are you ready?" The owl chirped once, soft, tender, and full of trust. He raised his arm, letting the little creature hop down onto the perch. The owl settled in instantly, folding its wings and bowing its head. And then the room exhaled. A wave of warm, silvery light rose from the wooden floor, gentle and slow, like fog lifting at dawn. The air shimmered with soft ripples that carried no sound except the faint hum of old magic awakening from a long sleep. Hermione whispered, "It's remembering." Ron's voice was barely audible. "Feels like everything's falling into place." The light wrapped around the owl like a soft blanket. Feathers glowed, and the tiny creature lifted its head proudly, looking as though it had suddenly remembered who it had always been. The silver glow pulsed once more, peaceful, complete, and then faded into the air like a dream, dissolving into morning. The suspense had released itself. Harry sensed it. Hermione felt it. Ron nodded slowly. Everything was quiet, but not the strange quiet of broken magic. This was a warm quiet, the kind that made the world feel whole again. Hermione stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on Harry's arm. It's done. The memory has been honored. The spell is at peace. Harry smiled softly. She can fly now. Ron's voice carried a mix of awe and gentle relief, and she doesn't have to be alone anymore. The owl flapped its wings experimentally, one soft flutter, then a second, stronger one. It lifted briefly off the perch, hovered with a sparkling shimmer around its feathers, and landed again with a happy chirp. It didn't fly far, as though choosing to stay close to the three friends a little longer. The attic felt brighter, warmer, as though the forgotten student's gratitude lingered in the air like a final whisper of silver dust. Hermione sighed deeply, comfort washing over her. Magic is humming again. Do you feel it? Harry nodded, like the castle is smiling. Ron chuckled softly, a sleepy smile, yeah. They stood together, quiet, content, and wrapped in a soft peace that sank deep into their bones. The owl hopped onto Harry's shoulder once again, feather light and warm. Let's go home, Harry whispered. And so, in the hush of the late-night attic, with moonlight washing gently over them, the three friends left the forgotten spell to rest. Hogwarts hummed quietly around them, whole once more. The castle was still when the three friends made their way back through the hallways. The tiny owl nestled comfortably against Harry's shoulder. Its feathers rose and fell with each slow breath, warm and peaceful, as though the weight it had carried for years had finally dissolved into the soft glow of the moonlit air. The whisper of restored magic hummed faintly around them, gentle and reassuring, like a lullaby only Hogwarts could sing. Ron walked with his hands tucked into his pockets, letting out long, content sighs every few steps. Hermione, her curls drifting softly with each movement, smiled quietly in that way she only did when something truly meaningful had settled deep in her heart. And Harry felt lighter than he had in days, not because of any grand victory, not because of danger avoided or mysteries solved, but because tonight's adventure had unfolded with a kind of gentleness he rarely experienced, an adventure of healing rather than conflict. The walls faintly glowed with warm candlelight as they passed, and the moving staircases slowed themselves just enough to carry the trio without rush. Portraits leaned out of their frames, watching them with knowing eyes, but offering no questions, as though they understood that some stories were meant to stay quiet, resting softly in memory rather than being spoken aloud. When they reached the Gryffindor common room, the fire was a low ember, crackling peacefully. The room felt like a warm blanket, soft shadows dancing along the walls, inviting them closer. The three of them lingered near the hearth for a moment, simply breathing, letting the warmth settle around their tired bodies. Hermione's voice came first, barely above a whisper. I think tonight reminded me that magic isn't just about spells. It's about care and connections and remembering things that shouldn't be forgotten. Ron nodded slowly. Feels like the kind of magic Mum talks about. Harry glanced at the owl resting quietly on his arm. Feels like the kind of magic that doesn't need wands at all. There was no urgency now, No tension, just the soft exhale of a long night finding its end. The little owl blinked up at Harry, nuzzled its tiny head into his cloak, and settled down to sleep. And the moment it did, an unspoken warmth rippled gently through the common room, like a final message from the forgotten student, carried on the quiet breath of Hogwarts itself. The friends shared one last peaceful look, then headed toward their beds, each step slower, sleepier, more dream-filled than the last. The night wrapped around Hogwarts like a gentle embrace. The stars glittered softly, the air felt completely still, and somewhere deep in the heart of the ancient castle, magic whispered one final time. Rest, let go, drift softly into dreams.